Singer and songwriter Grace McNally has had a passion for music and classical guitar since the age of 5. Today, I talk one-on-one with the guitarist and songwriter for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Grace McNally, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me. This is a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you having you on as well for here on Quintin's Close-Ups. Obviously, you are a guitarist and songwriter. You are a native of the greater DMV, Washington, D.C. area. And I know that you discovered your passion for classical guitar at the age of 5. Let me ask you this, Grace. What song of yours describes you today?
What song like an original song?
Yes, ma'am. Any song describes you. Which one of your songs describes you today as a person and as an artist?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I would say, I don't know. It's like, I think each song I've written is a part, like it tells a part of who I am or like something that I've gone through, you know. But right now, I don't know, like I would say probably, it's been honestly a couple, I'm like working on stuff right now, I haven't completed anything, but it's been a couple years since I've really like written a full song and one that I put out there, like the ones that people might be listening to. So I would say probably the ones that out of all the ones that are out there, probably Give Me Water would be one of the most ones that I feel like it's in a voice that I didn't know I had, you know, when I wrote it. It was just kind of was unusual in the style that I wrote it in, and it just kind of felt different, but it felt like of something that was inside that like needed to come out, and it was, you know, spiritual and uplifting, and like just kind of felt like that was something maybe I needed at the time. I feel like a lot of times songs we write, we are ones that we need to like hear, you know what I mean? Kind of like people write books that they like need to read. It's kind of like sometimes that, like with writing, at least for me, like it's very therapeutic. So at the time when I wrote the song a couple years ago, I think I was in a place where I needed that. And so I don't know. I would say that one's probably best describes where I'm at, because I'm now really working on recording it and then also putting it out there, and it's encompassing parts of my young adulthood, like growing up kind of, but then also like travels that I did when I was in my 20s. And so it's just it's got a lot of pieces, I don't know, to it. So yeah.
What is your voice and what is your style now?
You know, I think I'm in the process of creating and like figuring out what that is. I'm writing and working on an album right now, and each song that I have so far kind of put together for it, and ones that I'm working on, they're very, I love so many different styles of music. I love Latin guitar. I love folk Americana, you know, I love African and West African music and Afro-Brazilian music. And so I just listen to a lot of stuff, and I think I'm writing and letting myself be inspired by different styles to kind of see what comes out. So honestly, like, I'm figuring it out. I know I have a voice, but I feel like it's coming, like, I don't know what it's going to be for this album. You know what I mean? Like, it's still very much cooking, you know, in the oven. It's still in the oven, so we'll see what happens. Yeah.
What particular genre of music really inspires you as a person?
That's a great question. Probably Brazilian music. I think it's the most beautiful. It's so multifaceted. They have this classical, like in choro, it's like classical European, but then also Latin and so emotive. And then like the rhythms coming from like northern Brazil with like the African influence. I'm very inspired by rhythm. I play the tambourine as well, or the pandero style. And so that's something I picked up a couple years ago, and I feel like that's been influencing the way that I think about music and write music and listen to music. So I love probably the Brazilian music that comes from Brazil. I haven't heard a genre that I don't like, honestly. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, let me ask you, Grace, what is music today?
That's a good question. In some ways, I think I live a little bit under a rock when it comes to music today. Like, I listen to a lot of music that came from like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so but there is great music coming out of I know there's great music that's out there that's modern. I think you can pretty much find anything that you like, anything, you know what I mean? Everything from, which is what's cool about, now we're all connected through technology. So I feel like there's fusion going on that's like couldn't have even dreamed of, before the technology exists right now. So, I think music today is, I always feel like music is a reflection of like the psyche of like humanity and what is kind of what we're going through. And I remember in history class in college, like music history class, learning about the way music's changed as like society's gone through like technological changes and cultural changes. So I feel like we're in, like, it's hard to almost like step out and like look at it from and I honestly haven't tried. It's a good question. I would like to think on that, a little bit more and maybe just do some research, because where we're at right now globally, I feel like I don't know, but there's definitely, music is always a reflection of that. I feel like art is too. So yeah, I think in like 20, 30 years, we're going to have a better, view of like, oh, that's what was going on. But I think music always will be a therapeutic thing for humans, and for people who write it, for people who listen to it. So it's always going to have that component to it.
And guess what? Here's a tidbit. I'm taping my interview right here at your alma mater, the College of Charleston.
Are you?
I'm right here.
I was looking at it and I was like, that looks like maybe, is it? I was like, it looks familiar, but is it the science building?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here underneath the dinosaurs and some other things that I'm kind of a little freaked out about. But
yeah, you're like, don't eat me. But that's so cool.
Yes, ma'am.
The building I remember they were building it back when I was in school, and when it was done, I was like, this is beautiful. Yeah. Yes. It's College Charleston's special place. Yes. Yeah. Did you go?
I went here. Geez, this was back in 2009. I came here for obviously communications, so that was fun when I had the time to be here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
So did you stay in Charleston, or are you?
This is home. Born and raised here.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Born and raised here, and I grew up coming here and taking classes and communication classes here with Patrick Hartward and Kirkstone and people like that. And then I ended up taking some of the classes when I did become a college student. So this place has always been a part of my life as well.
Wow, that's so cool. And I'm sure you've seen it just change, like the city itself change over a period of time, and even like to watch the school grow, because I know it's gone through a lot of changes and like growth over the last, even since I've known about like 10 years, 5 years.
Right.
That's really neat.
Yes, well, it is. It really is. Well, let me ask you, you talk about the fusion. What exactly is that today?
Fusion is, at least in the way I see it, it's when two things that are really seemingly like not connected come together and they make something new that never existed before. I think of like salsa music as fusion. I think of, and right now what's going on fusion wise, gosh, I imagine that I mean, I think like there's definitely like I don't know. I could speak from my own experience in writing with feeling like I've been fusing together two styles, but as far as like what's going on in the world, I know let me think. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. One in this I have a travel like a podcast and a radio show called Travel Notes, and that is kind of I feel like ultimately we're exploring that concept of like when how are different musical styles connected, or do they come together and almost form a bridge between different cultures? And one recent episode I talk about the connection between Senegal and Senegalese musicians' influence on Americana music, which, you know, like Mumford and Sons, and even back in the 80s, like Peter Gabriel pop music, how these totally different parts of the world, totally different cultures musically come together and create a sound that's, always find fusion music very exciting because it's like eating something that's like spicy and sweet and like savory all at the same time, you know? It's like, ooh, like, what is this? Like, what came, all these parts, like, coming together. So I would say, like, that kind of stuff is happening, and that is really, I find it very exciting. I don't know how those artists find each other. I'm imagining just through, like, the fact that we can all hop on a plane and, like, go, you know, it's so much easier to travel and communicate globally now. So it's a really exciting time, I think, to be a musician and also to be a listener of music because, yeah, like lots of things, anything's possible, really.
What is on your playlist right now?
You know what? I've been listening to a lot of like Frank Sinatra. Oh. I don't know. Maybe it's the holidays. Like I love like, you know, 40s, 20s, like jazz. I love jazz. I love swing. I love like singers like Billie Holiday and Etta Jones, Etta James, like Ella Fitzgerald, listening, and like Eva Cassidy, she's amazing. A lot of blues. I love the blues. But specifically, yeah, that's kind of what I've been listening to, really, to be honest. I go through so many different phases. I listen to a lot of like folk Americana, so like Hooray for the Riff Raff, Lake Street Dive, who else? I love like Leon Bridges and like I guess a lot of kind of soul and just that kind of stuff is what I'm really listening to right now.
Wow.
But there's just phases. Like in the summertime, I was listening to a lot of like, you know, like West African inspired music and hey, that was my boyfriend, Ryan. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm listening to right now. It kind of changes, honestly, compared to the seasons, I feel like.
Wow.
And even maybe like time of day.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you like to listen to? I'm just curious. I feel like sometimes it feels weird because I do a lot of interviews too. So I'm like, whoa, is this like being on the other side? I'm like, I want to ask you questions.
Yeah, but I know. Well, you've seen my Instagram stories, and that's all I play. I put on all of that music every day, you know, just to inspire people and get them in the mood for things. So yes, I listen to Anita Baker. I'll listen to, you know, Mary J. Blige. So I'm trying to keep everything.
Love her.
Back in the day, yes, ma'am. Yeah, R&B music primarily. From the 90s to the early 2000s, and that's about it. That's where I stopped.
Yes. No, 100%. Like, hip-hop and R&B, like, from that time period is so good.
Yes.
Alicia Keys. Do you like Alicia Keys?
Oh, yes. Yes, she's always great, too. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, what does world folk music mean to you?
Well, I think world folk is, like, it's music that it can be from anywhere in the world. And then it's music that is made by, like, I think of folk music and I think of music that is really, like, music of like the people coming from maybe from all different types of musicians, where it's musicians who you don't have to be like a conservatory musician to be a folk music. Like usually folk musicians are just, they self-taught, they music is truly like what gets them through life. Like whether it's, you know, singing after a long day of work and, you know, sitting on the back porch with friends and jamming and just improvising on whatever comes up, you know. I went to this really interesting, when I was living in Austin, this jam called Peanut Butter and Jam.
Oh.
And it was in, I think it was in like East Austin. But it was a late night. I'm not a late night person, but this is back in my like early 20s, you know, but it was a late night jam that started maybe around 11, but it was all people who were coming from like working, like very physical labor jobs, right. But they would get up on stage and improvise like rap, spoken word, R&B. It was incredible. And although maybe that's not, people wouldn't say that's like folk music as like someone with a guitar singing, you know, but to me, that's kind of what folk music encompasses, where it's like, it's true. It's like, if you want to get to know a place, like you listen to their folk musicians in a lot of time, you know? So to me, folk music is that, and I think it's a kind of something I've put together in my own mind of like, because I love world music and I love music from all over, different music from all over the world, and usually I'm drawn to like the folk roots style of whatever culture, honestly, it is. So, yeah.
And I've heard great things about Austin, and including their barbecue. But let me ask you,
yeah.
What folk musician inspires you today? Actually,
well, I guess you could call him a folk musician. I'm very inspired by Baden Powell, who is a Brazilian guitarist, but he plays, like, his music can be very classical sounding, but it also is very African too in ways. Like, he really writes in like lots of different styles and played in a lot of different styles, and his music was so raw. Like he would sometimes sing with his guitar, and like he has this very raw, very real sound that I really admire, and I feel like it for, you know, but he really yeah, I would say he's probably who I'm really inspired by, like, because I'm a guitarist, and that is like my first instrument and like real medium for music. Yeah, his style and his playing and his writing, like, and arranging really, really inspire me. Like, I feel like I'm learning an arrangement by him right now. All the Things You Are.
Right. And
he does something new with it every single time. And that's a jazz standard, you know, but he puts this like very percussive, like interesting spin on it. It's recorded with drum and bass. So for me, he's a very exciting writer and arranger. And yeah.
Wow. And what are those standards of music that you've come to learn about over the years?
Mm-hmm. What are the standards?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you mean like standards as in like quality, or standards as in like music?
Yes, I should say the quality standards. I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, that's okay. That's two definitions, you know, like could be a music word. Yeah, I feel like music, it's like, it's not almost what you say, it's how you say it type thing. It doesn't have to be a very ornate, like technically complicated piece to be a very powerful song or piece, you know? And that's something I've come to really appreciate, I think, about music. I really was only in the classical world for a lot of my life and then moving and branching out into other styles, I've come to really appreciate the power in simplicity, and also in really music as like a means of communication, not so much, as a means of communication. And it can be very, it can just be very powerful. Yeah. And so quality I think is just by the emotion that someone puts into a piece or a song. I think that is what is ultimately communicated through music and what people feel. It's almost hard to put your finger on sometimes. It's like when you read a poem that is really moving, and it's like maybe what they're saying but almost what they're not saying, or reading in between the lines. So music, is kind of, I think quality comes from that. And you can feel when it's like, oh, this is something someone really like. This is an authentic song that someone really like went through this, or has felt this. So say quality.
And I know that on your Facebook page you said this. Plato said, quote, "Music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything." How is your music giving a soul to God's universe?
Oh, man, that's a great question. My hope and like intention with my music is to, in a lot of ways, like just provide a uplifting and a, joyful, like, and also, I mean, it doesn't always have to be joyful because songs can be sad, but like, maybe joy isn't right, but really just like, I want to celebrate all the things that, through music, all the things that are beautiful about life, like that is really when it comes down to it. And that can be the sadness too, and like the struggle that we go through, and I hope to really, I dream of like it just being a connection, a point of connection for people, like, and that's what I hope for. I mean, I don't really know what else to say, honestly, because I feel like also, it's kind of a mystery. Like, I don't know what happens when this song goes out in the world. Like, I don't know how people receive it. I don't know how people, what it does. But that's just all I can do is hope and have put intention into the music.
And what else has your music given life to?
Life to?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't know. I mean, life to as in like, I don't know if I quite understand the question. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I want to go back to what Plato says. It says, quote, "Music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything." So let me ask you, what else has your music given life to?
Oh, well, I think songs in general are almost like a living thing because they have a rhythm, like the heartbeat, and like they have movement and they have emotion. And to me, like a lot of time, like that is in a lot of ways like a very human thing to have, like, rhythm, emotion, and energy, like moving through it. And so I guess all music has in itself like its own kind of life form or life like qualities. And I would say probably in that way. But giving life to everything, I mean, it's like, it's almost like how it gives, when you're like driving down the street in the car, don't have anything on, listening, you're not listening to anything. Not yeah, as in like you're not listening to anything. But then you put on a song and it's like all of a sudden things become a little bit more animated and stories happen in your mind, and maybe you see something happen outside and the song helps like interpret, or it gives the background music to whatever's going on. Like, I think music in that way also gives life. And so, yeah.
How have you understood, obviously, music better through other people's music?
I think through other people's music, really through, I find as I get older, maybe, well, I'm trying a lot harder to really listen to what maybe someone's saying, or it depends on, or just even thinking about it musically, like how is this like harmonically moved, or like what are they doing with the rhythm? Yeah, it really, and sometimes I'm just listening just to have something on, in the background that's just kind of relaxing and that kind of thing. But a lot of the time, or like the way lyric is said or something's communicated lyrically. So I try to just really pay attention. When I'm really intentionally listening to music, I do a lot of just passive listening too. But I would say that is the way that I'm listening, right now, and what I'm trying, when I sit down. And it also, for writing, I find like that's where, if I really like a song and I'm like, what do I like about it? You know what I mean? Is it the rhythm? Is it the way it's, is it the rhythm, or is it the way like the notes have been arranged, or is it just the kind of overall structure of the song, or the way that it's been arranged? Is it because it's with like, there's this one song in particular that really has been inspiring for me, is called Rainforest, and it's written by a Brazilian folk guitarist called Bola Sete. And it's guitar, but then a choir, and it's incredible. Like, it's probably one of the most moving pieces. And I found that arrangement really interesting because he put together like a solo instrument with a choir, and it really, or not, guitar doesn't always have to be a solo instrument, but the way he arranged it, I'd never heard anything like that before. And so, I find through just like really paying attention, and listening, it's where a lot of inspiration comes,
Oh yeah, that's just amazing, Grace. Let me ask you, when we come back here to Charleston, how do you showcase the unique artistic and culture community here in Charleston through your music?
Yeah, that has been like the most exciting thing for me coming back to Charleston. After traveling, I went to school here and then left. I lived in Austin for a little bit, and then went down to South America and Latin America, and got back, and I was like, wow, almost seeing Charleston differently, like through a different lens. Like, what's going on here musically? What is a unique cultural and artistic, what are unique and cultural artistic things about Charleston? And when I was in Brazil, I heard a lot of, when I was in Bahia, Salvador de Bahia, it was very interesting. Have you been?
I've heard of it. I've never been yet. Not yet.
Yeah, exactly. It is the type of place where it's very similar to Charleston. I found it very similar in a surprising way, and I don't know if it's because of the history with the African diaspora and the way with Brazil and America have very similar dark histories in that regard. But at the same time, Charleston and Salvador were both the kind of entry points for a lot of the, enslaved Africans coming over. And so the music reflects that culturally. And that was something when I was here in Charleston, I was like, oh, maybe there's a similarity. Like maybe the music sounds similar, in a way. And I, through going to different churches and learning, and had picked up the tambourine, the pandero. So, hearing similar rhythms from Afro-Brazilian music and then gullah music.
Yes.
And I was like, whoa, there is a connection here. Or I hear a similarity. It's different, but there's something there, in my opinion. And so I wanted to showcase that and explore it more musically, and always thought it would be cool to incorporate West African music too in my writing, just because my parents, they met and got married in Senegal, and we grew up listening to Senegalese and Malay and, like, you know, artists. And so it just felt like a point where I could explore a lot of, you know, different things. And so right now I'm working with a local group called the Plantation Singers,
Yes.
who are incredible. And it's just been so much fun, and a really incredible just journey working with them. And I found them just by Googling Gullah gospel groups, because I was looking for a choir,
Right.
to work on with the song. Actually, it was a different arrangement. I was originally hoping to work on with them, but then through just kind of playing together, like, oh, Give Me Water could be a really cool arrangement to do. And so I basically found them, though, through Googling them. Or Googling Gullah gospel group Plantation Singers came up, and I was like, ooh, this sounds really interesting. And I found out they played every Sunday at Hall. So, yep. Have you been?
I'm halls all the time, and I've actually listened to them when they've been there for the Sunday gospel brunch as well.
Yes, it's so much fun. Like, it brings so much energy, and it's a great time. And so a girlfriend and I were like, okay, let's go, you know, grab a drink. And then afterwards I went up to Miss Lynette and I talked to her. And Miss Lynette had started the Plantation Singers 20-something years ago. And they've been all over the world, all over the country. And they do traditional hymns in the style, and gospel music in the style of with a Gullah influence and rhythm. And so I was like, wow, this would be really cool to work with them. Anyways, so Miss Lynette, we talked, and immediately when I brought up the Brazilian, so it was a Brazilian song I was hoping to do with them, and she was like, we immediately bonded over just that connection, and she was like, absolutely, I'd love to, you know, to hear more about it. So, you know, I gave her my card, and then she did call, which I didn't know. I was like, I hope she calls, but I don't know, you know, I know they're busy. And so we started from there, kind of, that's when it started. We started talking about ideas of ways to collaborate. And then I started singing with them, and that's been so much fun. And a point of also worship for me through their music, because, you know, it's gospel music, and it's hard to sit still with gospel music. It's so joyful. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. You're right about that. Miss Lynette is always a household name here in Charleston, an institution. But let me ask you, what is that culture diversity and unity here in Charleston?
What is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I see through the music that we've been working on, just singing with them, and I see it. And Miss Lynette says this is truly comes from her, and that I've been very inspired by her perspective and outlook on life and music in general. But it is like a celebration and of the culture, the history, and the people that make it, and also just the uniqueness of what Charleston is. Like, it's a very unique place, and it and I think that the music does that. I think that it's a way to celebrate and a way to come together and be and really, gospel music's always so joyful. So I just think of, like, it's a joyful way to come together. And so, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
I think it did. I think it did.
Yeah.
And how do you hope to, well, actually want to inspire and fuel others through your mission and passion for music 5 years from now?
I don't know. I hope it would be. I love the idea of, like, creating connection through music, you know, culturally, and humanistically, I don't even know if that's right, but like, you know, understanding each other and better
Sure.
relating to each other through listening to each other's music. And I hope that for my music, and I hope to inspire other people who are other artists who, you know, are on their journey. Like, we're all on our own kind of path, and it can be hard, you know, pursuing the arts, and everything from making a living out of it, but then also, which I don't make my living from music right now. I work full time. So, but I mean, like, also in the sense of just your craft and working on your craft, and not giving up. But that could be anything from music to also anything, you know, like obstacles, like life is like, you know, full of them.
Yeah.
Every year it's like, you know, it's almost like it's the next level in a video game. It's like, okay, here we go. There's something new, but it's like, that's where the character, I think, putting in it, by meeting those obstacles and like overcoming, not even overcoming them, but learning how to work around them, and live and still pursue whatever it is that you love, you know what I mean, is where the inspiration and like, and also just voice comes from, you know, for, it could be music, it could be art, or it could be, you know, anything.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. That is really amazing. Well, guitarist and songwriter Grace McNally, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a pleasure, and you're a wonderful host. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Thank you. Thank you. Anytime. You're very welcome. You're very welcome.